Hello once again, and for this video, somebody in the comments, I'll put their comment up right now, asked me to make a gun sight for an airplane gun sight. I thought that was a relatively interesting project, and so here's my attempts at it. None of these are fully functional finished models, all of these are simply testing and just prototypes that just see if the general concept can work. If you want them, they will be in the description, at least the highlights of the creations. However, you will need to tune it and make it actually usable yourself. So, well, starting, I have the 0.1 and the 0.2 versions just to see if I can. Now, the reference that I was using was I was assuming that the person wanted a radar gun sight rather than just a normal one, which I'm pretty sure that they could just have easily made. Radar gun sights are pretty interesting because they actually show lead on your target, where to shoot to actually get it onto target, and other such things. I cannot exactly do that. I can't build an entire ballistics calculator and radar inside of an airplane. That is simply impractical. So instead, I looked at some images and I decided to go off the radar gun sight of the F-16 from this video which I found, which will also be linked in the description. Basically, it shows where the bullets will fall by using how fast the aircraft is turning and where it was in the past to estimate where the bullets will land in the future. Basically, I just need to measure what angle the plane was a couple seconds ago. And I actually have a system specifically made to measure that that I made for a helicopter some time back, so that even though it has a single rotor, it has a way of detecting where it was, and by using where it was and the deviation from the past to create guidance commands into the future. The missile always knows where it is. Anyway, so that's what this thing is. The very weak gyros on some weak servos makes the rotation delayed, but it does eventually sync back up. The 0.3 version, again, just seeing if it works. 0.4 version, just sending it around, and again, a lot of the stuff was just proof of concept steps. And the final 0.5 version was seeing if I can transmit all of that in an actual usable format to the pilot. So 0.5 version is kind of where this part ends, because after that I try to actually go for aesthetics and make it do the thing and look like the thing too. But 0.5 is kind of where the functionality of this line of prototypes ends. It has a lot of issues, honestly, because the thing is with my gyros and servos, they don't work at high speeds for some reason. I've tried to figure out why. It could be a whole bunch of things. I don't think it's like some nonsense physics things like the tennis racket theorem. Interesting stuff, by the way. And I don't quite think it's aerodynamics either, because it's quite balanced. So I don't know where these forces are coming from, but every once in a while when I pitch up, which means that the servo should stay lower than my nose, it just does the opposite and like flicks up for some reason instead of holding down. I don't know. It makes no sense, but this is as far as this version can get. The 0.6 and the 0.7 version were attempting to add the green lines in the actual video. Because previously I was just using some decals, clear blocks to just draw dots where the things would be. However, this method allows me to actually draw a full line using the power couplers. This has its own set of issues, of course. Specifically, if it goes too far to any side, it will snap. Combine that with the already unreliable things behind it, it wants to explode pretty consistently and often. The 0.7 version just had double the amount of connections to keep it more stable, because the power connector kept yanking it around and making it a little bit more unstable, so reinforcement was needed. And that's kind of the end of the line with that series of attempts. Moving on, I tried to skip the entire step of having a separate module to reference where the position was a few moments ago, and just build that into the cockpit display. After all, if I just put up some weak servos and the gyros themselves into the cockpit, it should, in theory, do the same thing. The reason why I didn't do that before was, one, I was afraid of aerodynamics, because it would have been asymmetrical, and two, it would have added more mass and stuff around the cockpit, and I wanted the cockpit to be able to stay relatively sleek, but that's not happening anytime soon. These versions did work a little bit better, the 1.1 and the 1.2 versions, but still aren't perfect. 1.1 used just having a lot of mass and gyros. The 1.2 version used no gyros and used aerodynamics for stabilization, but the problem is with aerodynamics is that when you're flying at different speeds, the sensitivity of them is different, and thus the amount of displayed drop on the bullets would be different. A benefit of this design, however, would be that it actually accounts for gravity in the drop, like how it's supposed to. Well, I can mimic that in my earlier versions by constantly having the gyros tilt down a little bit. If the plane was upside down, then it would register gravity as upside down instead of the right way around. This version, however, because it's asymmetrical and there's more mass in the nose, gravity naturally pulls the the drop indicator downwards, naturally accounting for gravity. And because it's directly mounted onto the cockpit, it has significantly less errors. It doesn't flick around as randomly, and it's a lot more controllable. However, the problem here is tuning this nightmare, because it is an absolute nightmare. The previous version had all the complex circuitry enclosed in nice boxes, separated from each other, so that you can isolate where the issues are and fix that one thing one at a time. Here, it's all in a massive block around the cockpit, so good luck fixing it and tuning it to actually display the proper ballistics, because there's no way in hell that that's ever going to work. But, in theory, there's a chance. And now, for my final attempt, maybe I lied. Maybe I can fit an entire ballistics calculator into a plane. And what if I told you that those are already in the game, and that there's an entire block that's dedicated just to being a ballistics calculator, showing how to shoot to intercept the enemy? That's right, just use auto-aim. It's that easy. Turns out that if you just set up a gun right behind the cockpit, set it up to have no shooting controls, but leave the auto-aim on, have a couple of other guns behind that to show you where the 0 point is, where the forwards direction of your aircraft is, but really you can use just any part of your aircraft to show that. It shows you precisely where you need to try to turn to actually hit the enemy, and it does all the ballistics calculations, accounting for gravity, accounting for your motion, accounting for the motion of the enemy aircraft. So yes, it turns out that the best solution is always the easiest solution and the most common sense solution. Is this probably what the person wanted? Probably not. But it's also the closest thing that they're going to get that is within a reasonable size and is reasonably effective. The one thing with this design is you have to remember to align the guns as close to the seat as possible, specifically as close to the point of perspective in the seat as possible. Has to be as close to directly behind the head, because otherwise if it's offset it doesn't quite look right. And then just deactivate all of the other guns' auto-aim stuff, so it just looks like you have this one reticle on your HUD if you're in the fighter cockpit. And yeah, that's about it. I will be uploading the key prototypes so that you can follow along as needed. But all in all, turns out that auto-aim really is just the best way to do most things in this game, surprisingly.